Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your practice. Thank you for supporting this Sangha. When you like and subscribe, you affect the algorithm, and YouTube extends our reach so we can reach more people who are looking for practice, information, correct practice in this day and age, not from the deep, dark past. And on that subject, I have been doing a lot of work on the Buddhist reference, Buddhism reference book. I've organized it, I've alphabetized it, I've extended some of the. This is the creation of a book is always like this. There's a lot of revision, a lot of addition. How many pages are we up to now? Just as a gauge, 153. So that's twice what we started with. And I'm going to start reading from it because the information is, I think, a little bit more clear. And so now it's going to be alphabetical. And just so you know, I was posting videos daily, sometimes twice a day. But those were all ad-lib videos based on my over 40 years of practice. I'm Sylvain, in case you don't know yet, if you're new here. A lot of new subscribers recently, so welcome. Thank you for being here. As you know, and this has plagued Buddhism since Shakyamuni's time. Shakyamuni was pretty darn smart. He taught orally. In other words, he didn't write anything down. Shakyamuni understood that India was a land, still is a land, of many, many languages, not dialects, languages. There are people who speak a language in India. To us Westerners would sound identical to somebody from a different area of India, and yet the two of them could not communicate. So they have derivations of languages so they can communicate. But understand, there are over 125 recognized independent languages in India. Could you imagine? The United States, for instance, has 50 states. Just 50. And if every one of those states had a different language, it's hard to conceive of, right? But India is a land it's the most populous land on the earth. And the reason I say all of this is because language is problematic. And so Shakyamuni taught memorization. This is why every sermon has this prose portion, because it's easier to memorize that way and get it right. Yeah? Think of your favorite songs. How many do you know by heart that you could recite? Not only the words of the song, but the inflections and the characteristics of the song, yeah? Well, chanting is singing. And teaching these prose sections, these sermons, they were singing. And this is how Buddhism was spread for hundreds of years. It wasn't until the nervousness, which is throughout the teachings of Buddhism, about losing the teachings, that those, usually the elite, would hire a scribe to transpose, most likely somebody who had memorized verbally, right, the songs, the teachings, and transcribe them into writing in various languages. And contrary to certain schools of thought, no, Pali is not the original only language of Buddhism. That was a transcription. First of all, Shakyamuni taught in Prakrit, a kind of how would you say it? In the terms of India, with its caste system and different languages to match, Prakrit was more of a everyday man's Sanskrit. a mishmash with some Sanskrit, maybe Pali, but they were regional dialects, truly dialects, that allowed Indians of different castes and from different regions of the country to understand one another. So if you're looking for an original language, it's Prakrit. But the minute you seize upon that, understand that Shakyamuni himself often said that the teachings of Buddhism should spread in the local language of every region, not just India, but as it traveled throughout the world, the teachings of Buddhism should spread within the local cultures and languages, because he understood from day one that the attainment of awakening, Buddha-ness, is an individual thing. This is why Shakyamuni promoted learning all of Buddhist scholarship as well as non-Buddhist, right? Because ultimately, what forms our idea of the world and how we experience it, though we may share many thoughts and beliefs, our view, our experience is very individual. And therefore, our path to aha, to renge, is going to be very individual. That's why we can't hand one another enlightenment. It's a personal thing. That's why the idea of a sectarian division or lay organizations and groups, those are about hierarchies, authoritarianism, groups, membership. They're not about Buddhism, strictly speaking. That's not their primary function. Because if it were, everybody would be individually practicing. This is why he came up with the whole concept of Sangha. Sangha isn't, you're not technically a member of a Sangha. You can practice with a Sangha, be a part of a Sangha, but a Sangha is individuals of like mind, right? Remember Itai Doshin? Many in body, one in mind. One in mind, not because we're all, our paths, our samsaric paths are the same, but our goal is the same. Our goal is opening that portal built into our minds, our sentience, that in samsaric mindset, we simply don't pay attention to. And so the training, the finding out, the study, the practice is about training our minds to open that portal, what Nichiren calls the Honzon, right? So that we can, open that sentient, that Buddha-ness I to perceive the true nature of life, the engine of life, the Myoho Renge Kyo. All right. So the first term we come to here, that was my little blurb on language, by the way. So language is important, but the words aren't important. The language is important because it's a way we communicate thoughts and ideas and inspire or assist each other to understand, to perceive, to get on our own path, to figure things out. But that information isn't in the words, right? The words are stumbling blocks of a sort, but they do help us build pointers, right? Fingers pointing to the moon, but they're not the moon. So the meaning is the moon, right? The meaning of the language, which only we can perceive for ourselves, is how we get, oh, I get it now, right? Those moments. That's what the language is pointing to, but the meaning, which ultimately we figure out for ourselves, that's our individual path. That's how we reach, open that door, that Honzon, the ultimate Gohanzon, the Go Honzon, right? To perceive Buddha-ness. And one of the things that we need to challenge is attachment, which is the word for today. I try with each word to put about three reference points, possible definitions, and I've found that in some cases, like tackling a word like soul, which is so non-Buddhist, that the definitions are so terrible on the internet, Google, wherever, Britannica, Encyclopedia, Wikipedia, wherever you look. These definitions, which when I was growing up, I thought of a dictionary as the authority, right? We all grow up authoritarian because our parents don't have a manual on how to raise us. So ultimately, they just tell us. Well, we get used to that authoritarian behavior, right? So I thought when I was a kid for a long time, into my adult years, really, that dictionaries were the word, right? Encyclopedias were the truth. Come to find out after living long enough that, dictionaries, encyclopedias, they're all subjective to cultural norms, right? What society now defines this word as. Oh my goodness. Apply that insight to the teachings of Buddhism for thousands of years. Yeah, there's a lot of bull crap out there. And I found when researching some of these really key terms of Buddhism, how much erroneous and sometimes really flagrant misunderstandings are in these supposed paradigms of correctness. Yeah, no wonder people are confused about Buddhism, yeah? Okay, so attachment. Back on track, Sylvain. I have the first one. First one is Samsara. Okay, that doesn't really say a whole lot. 2, a condition of identification. You've heard me talk about that a lot. And 3, collecting and maintaining database. Now that is more specific to my discussions with you in this Sangha. You'll know, but people who aren't familiar with our Sangha might twist their heads on that one. What do you mean, maintaining a database? In case you're curious further on this video channel on YouTube, you can go to the homepage of the channel, and there's a search bar in the middle of the page. Not the top, that's YouTube. The one in the middle of the page is this channel. And you can plug in the word attachment. You'll find videos specifically addressing this topic I've talked about years earlier. So if you're interested in that. But this book is about trying to make concise, where it's possible, definitions useful to our continued study, right? So that when you run into a word as you're studying or you hear it, what does that really mean to us in this age with Nichiren as our mentor? That's the parameters of this book. It's not about Hinayana. It's not about what some Pali scholar from who knows where decided then, because that's all provisional and not useful to us now, right? We practice the modern elucidations of Shakyamuni's teachings of the Lotus Sutra, period, end of story. That's why it's effective for us. Everything else, it's no longer relevant. It doesn't work. It's important to know that. It's good to study to get how we got here, but, right? If you still insist on driving a horse and carriage today, you're going to be seriously limited in your abilities to do anything. You have to drive a car, a vehicle. That's the way we get around today. Same thing with Buddhism. Attachment is a state of mind, deeply complex, and can also be defined as samsara. See samsara. Also see the seashell collecting analogy. So there's 2 references right away to help elucidate what is samsara, and there's an analogy that may be useful for understanding this state of mind of attachment. Right? Because it's nuanced. When we first hear the word attachment, we think glue. We think physically, right? As a visual in our mind. But that's not attachment. Attachment is a more profound, what Shakyamuni would have called maybe habit energy. It's far more nuanced. Let's continue. Attachment is the energy we put into the objects of our craving, desires, and things. The term refers to the mental commitments we make and maintain through our habit energy, as well as reinvested in each successive moment to identify our definition of self. Whoa, how'd that turn around? Through our association with the things we crave. Oh, you see how complicated that got all of a sudden? It's not about the thing. The thing is barely part of the attachment at all. Yeah, underneath the mechanism of attachment in Buddhism is our identification of self. How many times have you heard mimetics about, wife, picket fence, 2.5 kids, right? They're abstractions about ownership of things reflecting who we are. Are you obsessed about the next iPhone? Why? What's different about it? Really, truly. Is not your phone something you use to call and text people? Is your phone really about being a professional photographer or claiming that you're either a professional photographer or filmmaker or at least associable with that status? Isn't everything we own? Right? If your car's a little dinged up, you don't want people to see you driving up in the parking lot, so you park far away. People will think I'm a bum, or I'm not, who I want them to think I am. But if I go deeply in debt and somehow manage to get myself an AMG Mercedes and I drive up in the parking lot, I may not be able to feed myself because I'm so funded, but people will think I'm important. They'll listen to me. They'll think highly of me. Everything we own is a game of defining. And are we really trying to impress everyone else? You ever heard somebody say, I don't care what people think? Well, of course you do, but you're number one. You care what you think. And you just want to see in the glint of other people's eyes that reflection of who you think you are. Oh my gosh. If you don't think that's ego. That's exactly what this term attachment is identifying. Look what you're doing. Look, your whole life, your existence is based on ownership, obsession with ownership. Why are video games so damn popular? It's the fastest way to identify with things, and they're digital things. They're not even real, but that rush, that sense of now I have this, now I have this, now I've conquered this, now I've conquered that. Oh my gosh. This is the samsara that Shakyamuni spoke of. And it begins with this mental function that we can control, identified as attachment. It's just a piece, but it's a very important piece, huh? So the actual attachment, to get back to the book here, is the tangle of thoughts and habits and expectations of our cravings, and not with the objects of those cravings at all. Attachment is the very samsaric process of identification. Now, do you understand identification differently? It's not that's a those and that's a this and this is not that. That's not identification. That's labeling. No, when I say identification, I mean our identity is tied to, anchored in. That's why I always talk about the past, because the moment you identify with something, that something is gone. Everything is changing constantly. So the very act of identification is retrograde. You're not living this moment, this life. You're living the past. Why would you do that? That's why this is such a fundamental thought, understanding, term in Buddhism. When we quiet the streams of cravings to define the self, we can uncloud our minds from attachments to open our Buddha eye and awaken to the true nature of life and all phenomena as the ongoing process of the engine of life. And that's where the definition ends. What does that mean? Look up engine of life, right? Just like you would any kind of a reference book. You end up jumping around to different concepts just to understand the one. This is study in Buddhism. And the next video will be on attitude and intent. You ever heard that on this channel before? Well, that's attachment. So what do you think? Does that kind of expand your ideas on what that word now references in Buddhism, right? It's not the word, but once you begin to understand what the word is pointing to, oh my goodness, that's immense, yeah? That's a huge ball of energy going on in our heads, yeah? Either our physical heads or our mind head, wherever that is. We'll talk about that too. All right. Thank you for listening. Again, thank you for your support. If you can, like the patrons do on Patreon or directly with PayPal, man, you guys are so essential to keep this running. I'm so appreciative of your efforts. Thank you. Thank you. So much to talk about. And a lot of the discussions, as you'll notice, over 1,000 videos on this channel, they look like they're talking about the same things, but I constantly try to talk about Buddhism from every angle I can think of. And you know what? I can't conceive of every angle, right? You have angles that you can share with me in the comments. Oh, I hadn't considered that. Let me address it that way of seeing it or questioning it or whatever. So this is how we function as a Sangha. We help one another increase our confidence, right? Our resolve, so that when we chant Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, every cell in our body goes, yes, I know where I'm going. And I know where I'm not, right? And that's everything. Just slowly molding our mind to wrap around the true engine of life happening right now into the next moment without dragging along all that baggage of attachment, yeah? We still have all the stuff, but we don't identify with it. We're participating with it as it's changing every moment. It's a very different way of thinking. So it takes effort. And we get, every time we chant, we're doing it. How much we can hang on to that and train our brain to stay closer and closer to that, that's practice. So again, I honor you for your practice. I know the effort it takes. Thank you. Take care of your health. If nothing else, you need the stamina to practice, yeah? All right. I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.